Hello, Chelsea.
Hi.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Chit Chat with Rob and Dima, or Dima and Rob. Rob is on vacation today. So, as he is on vacation, we are continuing with the show. And today we have an absolutely amazing guest. We have Chelsea. And Chelsea, I'm going to ask you to tell us your last name because you have a funny story. Tell us about your last name.
I do. So my last name is Borruano, and in the past, I've always told people it rhymes with Corona, which was the easiest way for them to remember it. And now it's a little awkward, but I still say it. Named my dog after Corona Borruano. So here we are.
I don't think that's a name that will ever be difficult for us to remember. So
no, and actually, it might work better even now.
Yes. And we were talking about Chelsea's dog. So you mentioned that your dog's name is Corona. So yeah.
Poor thing. Everyone's like, "Are you going to change her name now?" I'm like, no, I don't think I'm going to change my dog's name, but thanks.
Well, maybe that would make her even more relatable somehow. We'll also remember Corona.
She's a special dog, and so I think it all came full circle at some point.
That's too funny. So Chelsea, you and I, we were supposed to talk over a year ago.
Yeah.
And remember, we were trying to set up time and all of this, and finally we get to talk virtually.
Yes, love it.
Who would have imagined?
I know. There's been so many stories like that. It's like, when I first started trying to connect with people about the nonprofit, there was so much to do. And so there's a lot of people that I've finally been able to connect with, and you're one of them. So this is really exciting for me too.
Well, it's exciting for me as well. So before we start talking about your Not Alone project, and I can see your beautiful shirt, we're going to talk about all of this. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your journey and what got you to this point.
Yeah, it's been a long journey. So probably like a lot in my life has been related to kind of my struggles with anxiety and depression without me even kind of knowing about it. And so it wasn't until I kind of hit what I call kind of a low point in my life where I was really struggling just to get out of bed every day, to the point of, I don't tell a lot of the details of it because it was such kind of a hard point in my life, but I was 28 years old. I was just getting out of a couple of really hard relationships and kind of just not not doing well at all. I wasn't really talking to anybody about what was going on, but I wasn't leaving my house. I wasn't getting out of bed. I wasn't able to really contribute at my job. And it felt like I was failing everyone, including myself. And so I finally made the decision to reach out and see a psychiatrist. I kind of just searched the web and found something, luckily, that had openings.
Yeah.
A lot of people face struggles, especially right now, with even just trying to get an appointment with somebody. So I did. I was able to get an appointment, and the first few sessions were really rough. I didn't know what to do. Like, I felt very uncomfortable being there. I was one of those people that kind of had, I guess, had given into the stigma around mental health. And so it was hard to even make that decision in the first place and make that call. But when I finally did, she did kind of explain to me what it was, sort of what I was dealing with, and that I was suffering from depression and anxiety, a few different types of anxiety, actually. And so it wasn't until like someone was like, "This is what's happening with you," and even, essentially diagnosed me with these things, that I was like, oh, okay, I'm not, these things that I've been feeling all my life are actual problems that have solutions, And so at that moment, I didn't know it until, after a process of going through treatment and talk therapy and things like that, but that changed my life.
Yeah.
And so after that, it was probably a year later when I decided to openly tell my story about it. And just the amount of people that came to me and said, number one, thank you for sharing. And secondly, I'm going through the same thing. And I didn't realize, just like you, that I'm not alone, which again, sort of ties back into eventually me looking for a way to make to tell my story publicly, but also to give other people a platform to tell their stories, so that we could build this amazing network of people that once you know that somebody else is sort of in a similar space to you, all of a sudden your problems seem a little bit more manageable.
Yeah.
And so I was able to I saw this amazing performance of Moving Colors, which my cousin is a part of their program. And it was them translating their stories through dance.
Yeah.
Through like local leaders and things like that. And it's like, this is powerful. And you know, I saw just this like opportunity, I guess. And so that's when I decided to launch the live art event. Literally just sat at my computer thinking for probably an hour or two, like, what should I call it? And that's where You Aren't Alone kind of came to pass, and you know, created the logo. And it was just going to be one event. It was just going to be an art event where I was going to have, basically I had people submit their stories of what they've gone through, and then I reached out to local artists, and they shared the stories, and then they were able to share their own stories and the stories that people submitted through both visual and performance art. This event was still one of the best of my life. We had over 20 artists participate. Like I said, it was anywhere from painting to fiber art to photography, sculpting, and then the performance artists were musicians and dancers and singers. And we even had a group out of Lafayette come and do, they're like a dance crew. So they did like the break dancing, and it was absolutely incredible. Oh wait, here my dog wants to get up and join us, and here she is. So hello, Kane. This is Kane. So from there, it was really it was a really powerful event in a lot of ways that really kind of paved the way for the nonprofit, the You Aren't Alone project, to take form. One of them was just the fact that like everyone was so excited about the event. They were saying how important this was for our community and how they've been looking for, you know, a space to be able to talk about these things. The people who shared their stories, just the therapeutic process of being able to put your story in words is so powerful. And then we also had artist meetups beforehand that I thought were basically just going to be more like information sessions for the artists to be able to kind of talk through logistics and things like that.
Yeah.
These meetups turned into some of the most, like, again, really sort of therapeutic like sessions where we all kind of told our stories in different ways and talked about how art was such a powerful tool in you know, coping and getting us through some of the difficult things that we've been through. And it was just like, again, another sign that like we can't stop here.
Yeah.
250 people show up. I mean, the amount of sort of feedback I got, we brought in community partners that were able to share resources. And so it was clear even before that we needed to do more. And then of course everyone was asking what's next. And I was like, okay, well, there's a next now. There has to be. And so that's when I started building my board of directors, and we, you know, did all the research we needed to start a nonprofit, which is not easy. But I will say, out of all the things I've done in my life, this probably went the smoothest. And it was just another thing where I was like, the reason this is going so well is because it's necessary. The community is behind us, and we have like such a huge support system for this. Is like, it can't go wrong because of all these things. And so we definitely had our struggles, but we launched the nonprofit with the live art event. It's tangled up in these dang headphones. And from there, we've really just, we've been heavily planning. You know, strategic planning was our first step. And then, of course, January, February hit, and COVID came, and we had to pivot and change up our strategy. But the good thing was that part of our strategic plan was we have our audience is basically people who, you know, like myself, are struggling with sort of mental health issues that maybe aren't to the point of a mental illness where you need inpatient treatment, because we have a ton of great behavioral health facilities here, but that you're in this like space where you can either get help and find a support network, or you may just turn to self-harm or drugs or things like that are going to help you cope that aren't in the healthiest ways. So we want to like meet this population where they are and help them as much as possible. In addition to that, our goal was going to be just to, the art community was a great kind of way to get into sort of programming and things like that. Well, then COVID happened, and now we're seeing, the Black community just really going through a lot of trauma, and they need it, like they need the resources to be able to take care of their mental health right now, in addition to all this fight that they've been having to fight their whole life.
Yeah.
And so we've really been able to adapt in that way to be able to offer resources as the needs are kind of come up. And so that's what we've been doing lately is as much as possible trying to
Wow. So I'm gonna, this is like a lot of wonderful information, and a lot of it I didn't even know before. I want to go back to the beginning, and then we're gonna go through it until today. So for the last, when like beginning of your life, first 29 years, you didn't have anybody around you, family or friends, that talk about mental illness, or was it a taboo to talk about?
I don't even know if it was taboo. It just wasn't, it didn't come up at school, like we didn't have programming based around talking about your mental health. Nobody really talked about depression or anxiety. Like we talked about stress, talked about coping with like the normal stressors, and things like that. And I was actually, as I'm like, kind of going through the process of also getting my mental health counseling degree, which I guess is another layer on this. It really is kind of opening my eyes to experiences that I had when I was younger that now I can identify as, symptoms of my depression and anxiety. And I didn't realize that. You really don't realize it until you're outside of it. And I think the same thing is just like, even with my family, some of them have told me now that like they have sought counseling, but it wasn't a good experience, or there was just like never any positive sort of, results from it. And I think that on top of just the fact that people just didn't really talk about it, were two of the biggest kind of contributors to not really knowing what was going on and not being able to identify it. And I've seen a lot of that. I mean, just myself, I haven't had the best counseling experiences. People come to me and ask me for like, who do I recommend as counselors and things like that. And I'm like, I'm still trying to find a therapist for myself.
Right.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, once you have a bad experience, I think within this field it's very hard to come back from that and not just get kind of turned off by the whole idea. And then I think, while I was going through a lot of this stuff, so was every all my friends,
Mm-hmm.
High school is not easy. And I think we were all dealing with our own stuff. And so it's very hard to say, to be there for somebody else when you can't even solve your own problems. So I think there was a lot of things there. But also looking back, we never had those conversations.
Yeah. And I agree with you about the counselors too. I went through counseling in my life, and I just couldn't stand just sitting in front of somebody who's writing on a notepad and looking at the clock on top of my head and saying, oh, well, the 45 minutes is over. Let's schedule for next week. And I'm like, I don't think this person even listened to anything I said in 45 minutes. And I'm not saying all counselors are like that. I've had good counselors, but it is challenging, and it would shut off a person from seeking help if that is their first or second experience.
Exactly. And that's another thing is, as we're kind of going through these classes with my mental health counseling program, is I would love to in the future look at the way that even just the way a counseling session is structured, in that, I don't know if that's the best way to do it. It's just what we've always done. And I think that's always the issue, is like doing things just because it's always been done that way. So there's a lot, and there's a lot that needs to change. I think just as going through the process of being a counselor, now I'm able to see both sides of it. And I think there's problems on both ends. It's like there's the stigma, but there's also sometimes a reason for that stigma. And part of it is the way that, even just the way that psychology started. And, we have such a kind of even tumultuous history where, mental institutions and things like that, and shock therapy and just all this negativity that really is where some of these programs were built from. And we're having to battle that and really come out the other end, more positive and stronger. And so I think that's, again, like we're talking about so many systematic changes, is that we're seeing it within the psychology field and within the mental health counseling field too, is that at this point, there's a lot of issues that maybe weren't addressed that are kind of coming to light. And one of them is diversity, and just making sure that we're offering programming and that we're giving opportunities to people from all backgrounds and all cultures, and that we're not just looking at, a Western view of medicine and a view of treatment. And so it's really multiculturalism in my program is also really big. And so I hope to bring more of that to Baton Rouge too.
Wow, that is so amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. We so need this, and it is a topic that most of the time we don't talk about it. But when we're going through major changes like this, it brings it to the surface. And I was reading about you and looking through your website, and it sounds that you've been getting a lot of people that are needing help, and they're seeking guidance. So tell us about what have you been experiencing recently?
Yeah, that's been interesting, because I think for a long time people did not necessarily consider mental health to be a priority. But you're seeing such a shift right now in that while, with COVID, for example, physical health obviously was the main priority, but there were so many people so worried about mental health and taking care of people's mental health as we're, self-isolating, as people are losing their job security and dealing with a lot of things that they did not expect, as people are dealing with health concerns and just fears. And so we had a ton of people we really got on the forefront of it and offer and immediately try to provide resources. But then secondarily, a lot of people came to me and said, are there therapists you recommend, or there programs that you recommend? I'm feeling this way or that way, and I'm not really sure, like, is this normal to feel this way? Like, I don't know how to deal with it. Or just that they wanted, the project to, just like, you reaching out, is that a lot of people have reached out. I think our main focus this year was going to be awareness, and without even realizing it. And because of how necessary these conversations are right now. And so with COVID, we did a lot of offering resources, and then I decided to kind of tell my own story about like what the self-isolation kind of did to me at first, and how I was able to manage that. And then we talked a lot about it in my mental health counseling courses through NYU, which I'm taking online classes right now. And so that was a huge topic of conversation within that program.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about that? Can you tell us about what you experienced as part of self-isolation? And of course, the main part is, what did you do about it, and what are you teaching people?
Yeah. So at first, there was a lot of emotions that I was feeling that I didn't necessarily expect. And a lot of it had to do with, I think, for me personally, it was that I was struggling with, working full time in the marketing field, which I do have a passion for and I love, but also I had been moving further into, the mental health world, and really knowing that this is where I need to be. Yeah. And so the initial reaction was that I need to do more to help people, because I know that this with happening with COVID is not going to be an easy thing for people to manage emotionally and mentally. And so my immediate reaction was, what can I do on that front? But then I was also having to sort of manage all the expectations that I had with my job, and just with, a lot of different things, I feel like there was a lot of pressure on people to kind of go about your daily life as normal. A lot of people talked about having structure and getting up and doing your makeup and, almost like acting like we're still in like a sort of normal space.
Yeah.
And for me, that wasn't an easy thing to accept. And so there was a lot of emotions around that. There were a lot of sort of emotions for me around this now added pressure. I felt like I needed to be there for a lot of people. I wanted to connect my family and make sure they were all okay. And so, trying to make sure you're connecting. And there's a lot of pressure to do that when it didn't feel natural necessarily, because now you're having to figure out virtual, like how to connect virtually, making sure you're calling people every other day, and it was a lot of pressure. Secondarily, I got really scared of the fact that I could stay in bed, and I was worried because there is the very real chance that when you already kind of suffered with depression and already have a lot of those issues, even though I've been, I've really kind of healed from it and I have all these tools, it was nothing compared to being told like, you can't leave your house. And so there's an anxiety there about like missing out on, interaction, which is vital to mental health. But then there's also the other side of it where I was scared that sort of what we call like your depressed brain, like those depressive thoughts, I was going to be so pulled to just not do anything, because that was like an experience that I faced, is that isolation. For depression, isolation is what you're drawn to, but isolation is dangerous for your mental health. And so I was very scared that I was going to be so drawn to just the idea of really cutting myself off from the world, because we were, in a sense, forced to do that a little bit, that it was going to get worse for me.
I want to add to that, it's also the uncertainty of, it's not being isolated for a week. It is, you didn't know until when that's gonna last and all of this. So to me, that was the biggest issue. It's until when, and it's still an issue because there's still a lot of uncertainty that we're living with.
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody, even and that was a lot of stuff that some of the other people in my class were talking about, is like, we're getting all this information, but none of it really, nobody really knows. Even the people that are supposed to have the answers don't have the answers. So yeah, uncertainty was huge. And that uncertainty on top of anxiety is like, it built to a point where emotionally, I didn't know if I could handle it.
Yeah. So what tips?
I started, using
you got caught up and I thought you were stopping. Yeah, apologize. Keep going.
No, that's perfect. So the number one thing I think for me, I was like, I need to just go easier on myself. Like, I need to allow myself the time to like, just, there was all this pressure and I felt like I needed to do all these things. And there was a lot of information out there about like, again, like the getting up, getting dressed, like having a structure, making sure you're doing this and that and that. It was like, I don't know if that's right for me. Maybe I'll try some of these things slowly. But the biggest thing was just letting myself feel what I needed to feel, but only allowing the negative emotions for a certain period of time. So whether that was carving out a couple hours to sort of just sit with the emotions I was feeling. For me, what that looked like was also writing it down, journaling for me, and sort of, has been just like writing things down has been huge for me. And so doing that, and then saying, okay, this is what I'm feeling, identifying it is a huge part of my healing process. And then saying, all right, that's okay. Now we're going to go and do, this work for the next hour. And then after that, we're going to do this. And so while there was structure there, I also allowed myself that time to, again, just like be, feel, do whatever it took. I didn't put as much pressure on myself when I thought I needed a day away from connecting with people. As important as those connections were, I also understood that it was important for me personally to disconnect. And so that looked like turning off the news, turning off the information that was being sort of thrown at us night and day, and disconnecting. And so I think that was also an important tool for people, was to, and it's going to be important right now too, with everything going on, is that, having all the information is vital, is important, but disconnecting is also okay. Taking yourself away from everything for a day. You're going to disappoint some people, possibly. That's okay. Self-care needs to come before anything else, honestly. Again, it's the whole, use your life mask, put your life mask on before you can help somebody else. And so that was important for me. And that's always been kind of something I struggled with, because as somebody who is drawn to helping profession, drawn to just helping others in general, sometimes it's easy to put yourself second. And part of mental health is not doing that. There's a difference between being selfless and, taking care of other people. And you got to take care of yourself. And so that was the biggest thing for me. And then eventually I made some decisions that were difficult to make. And one of those things was stepping away from my full-time job and to do freelance in the nonprofit full-time, because I was more drawn to that. I'm not saying quit your job, please don't go and do that. But for me, there was a lot of big decisions I needed to make, and it felt like that was just adding to the pressure. And so I had to find a way for me, the right path. And it's not going to be the same for everybody. But some of those little tools like disconnecting, journaling, finding creative outlets, picking up the phone and calling somebody when you're just not sure what to do, having that kind of support system. I did do a few teletherapy sessions that were offered for free through different programs, and those were great. I had my classmates, and we happened to be in a counseling, one of my counseling classes. So we actually had counseling sessions with each other.
Wow.
And those were actually really valuable. And so it was like, again, I'm going to eventually find a therapist for myself, because, it's actually crazy that my classmates were some of the best therapists I've had so far. But just being able to talk about those things made a huge difference. They really kind of helped me come to a decision about where I should go, what I should do next. And I'm grateful to them for that. And so there is power in therapy and talking through these things. So yeah, those are just a few of the things I got outside a lot.
You need to observe what your classmates did differently, because you said they are one of the best you've had. So see what they did differently compared to prior counselors you used in the past, and maybe that's going to be part of the process you were talking about.
Absolutely. And it was helpful to have that professor kind of guiding those things, because we're able to openly, after we had these sessions, discuss like feedback and discuss what we might do differently and things like that, and look at it, through a pretty harsh lens, to be able to like make sure that we're not failing our clients in the long run. And so, I'm very hopeful that programs like this are going to continue, so that we are going to move therapy in a more positive direction just overall.
Yeah. So you were mentioning that some people during this time, they're reaching out to you and they're asking for contacts, counselors. So is that going to be part of your next steps, which is putting together a list of counselors you recommend, or what is, or maybe the better question is, what is part of your next steps?
Yeah. Actually, there, myself and the vice president, Kayla Nolan, of the nonprofit, we've been kind of talking about the best way to go about putting together this sort of resource list. So Psychology Today is a great tool to search for, because they really kind of separate the different, you can basically search any type of therapy. But I think what the problem that we're kind of seeing is that there are a lot of different types of therapy, but I didn't know that until I was in school for this. And so while Psychology Today offers, like, you can choose cognitive behavioral therapy or, you know, all these different, what we call our theoretical orientations, that doesn't mean anything to, you know, the person who's like, I need help right now. They're not going to search for a type of therapy. So I think what we're trying to do here with this list, and it's work in progress. It's going to be kind of a long process to get it done, but I think it's vital for Baton Rouge right now, is we're trying to make sure that we're addressing, you know, more immediate needs. What are people actually looking for? And then we're providing just real sort of honest, like, information about, you know, the type of counselors you might be seeing. If somebody comes to us and says, I had a negative experience with this person, we're going to need to address that in some way. Obviously, we're not just going to call them out on our website, but maybe we don't necessarily include them in our recommendations. And so it's going to be a process. We definitely welcome as much feedback as possible in this, because I think, you know, we want to be really careful that we're not recommending anyone that might do more harm than good. But there's different needs that need to be addressed, and if we can build a database that kind of addresses some of those needs for our community, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, that is so great. So this is part of your next steps. What is next? What's the vision?
The vision. So ultimately, we are trying to change the conversation around mental health, and in that sense, we're trying to make sure that not only is mental health, you know, seen as something that is for everyone, but that it's also accessible to everyone. And so most immediately, our next step is addressing what's going on, you know, with the Black community right now, and how we can support them as an organization. We're partnered with Tanja Miles, which is this amazing, like, advocate for suicide prevention. You may even know her. Both, like, suicide prevention and a lot of other, she's been through a lot herself. She's a peer support specialist in addition to all these other things. And so we're working with her to provide a meetup, you know, for Black individuals right now who are dealing with, you know, the trauma of what's going on in addition to, you know, everything else. And so I won't necessarily be, you know, part of that conversation because I don't think it's my place, but, you know, we're trying to make the right connections to be able to offer things like that where needs exist. And so that's our,
I think she also talks about, I messed her name. It's not Tanja, is it? What's
Tanja Miles.
Yes. Okay. So then I didn't get it wrong. She talks a lot about mental illness as well. So in the past, I've heard her talk about these things. So it is a really good match in order to help the community with what she's bringing and what you are bringing.
She is going to be an amazing resource for us. And she's another person who I've been we've kind of connected a few times. But, you know, now it's time to take action. And so she's going to continue, I think, being a collaborator with us. She's, you know, very involved in the mayor's office and different organizations here. I think, and I don't want to speak incorrectly, but she has a lot of influence within the community, and she is a huge advocate for mental health. And so, I mean, she is the epitome of the people that we want to partner with. So it's really exciting that we're going to be able to do that with her, and we'll have more details on that very, very soon. But so it's things like that we're going to be doing more of. Right now, we're kind of reacting a lot, but we want to start being a little more proactive now that we things are, you know, as far as COVID goes, we're able to get together a little bit better as a board and sort of plan what comes next. And so hopefully we'll get back to in-person meetups, which we were doing prior to COVID, which basically are just these small intimate gatherings where we bring somebody in from the community who specializes in either mental health or wellness. And we kind of have a program, a small group gathering, and then we open it up to conversation. And that's in addition to giving people like a space, is that we're also trying to build that support network.
So are you not doing it virtually right now?
We are. We offered one virtual meetup for COVID. It was, we didn't have a ton of response to it. And I think part of that was that people were still trying to figure out like what they were doing in the midst of everything, but also there was a lot of virtual options, I think, as support for people. And so what we ended up doing was just promoting the ones that already existed, and trying to be a part of it when we could, and being a part of the conversation when we could. But so the next one that we're going to have is going to be virtual.
That's so great.
With
the banner of your website. So if anybody wants to learn more, visit you'renotalone.project.com.
Yes.
And let's tell us more about how can our viewers support you as you are building this new nonprofit. Everything is new, right? It's just started this year.
Yes. It is very.
Think about it. The timing is so right.
I know. It just keeps feeling right, and so I'm going to keep doing it until it doesn't. Basically, and that's kind of what's guided me in this process so far, both within with the nonprofit and with me obtaining my mental health counseling degree, and so
job.
and quitting my job, yes, and quitting my job. So there's every decision that I've made so far is getting me closer to just what I want to be able to offer this community when it comes to the mental health field. So there's a lot of ways that you can support the project. The first is just telling people about it, asking them to visit the website. If you think anyone could use our resources or could be great partners for the project, please reach out. The more help we have, the more collaboration we have, the better. Secondly, we do have our merch for sale. So we have these T-shirts for sale through the website, through teespring.com. You can get there through the website. And then we also have our main campaign, our main initiative is the Let's Talk About It campaign. Again, trying to change the conversation around mental health. So we have those T-shirts as well for sale on the website. And those, the whole point of those is that somebody comes to you, is what are we talking about? You tell them we're talking about mental health, and we're going to keep talking about it until everyone is used to it and okay with it.
So I'm gonna share your website.
Yes.
I know I had it ready, but now it is not showing. So give me a second. Let's see here. Oops. Okay. Rob does better job at sharing. So let's go. You'renotalone.project.com, and you can go to the top where it says support, right?
Support the project. Exactly. Yeah. And so that's where you can find, again, everything I was just saying, the ways to support. We also have a donation portal if you want to just, give some funds. Those are all going to fund the programs that we have in mind, in the future. And then we are looking for corporate partners. So if you're an organization that wants to get more involved on a sort of bigger level, we do have opportunities for that as well. And we'll eventually have another live art event once things get back to being able to have larger scale events. And so we'll be looking for partners for that. That'll probably be next year.
Yeah. And you mentioned about the corporate partners. It's not a matter of just getting sponsorships. Think about how they can help their employees with important topics. So they can bring you to talk to the employees. A lot of the challenge is a lot of people, they hide this or they don't know what to do with it. And that is where your role is to come and give resources and give connections and community, which we all need.
Absolutely. Yeah. As a partner to this organization, we don't just want, your money at all. We want you to be a part of the conversation, and we want to provide as much help as possible to this community, no matter what that looks like.
Yes, that's great. So Chelsea, what do you want to leave the viewers with? So one last thing, if there's one thing you want to leave them with, what is it?
I always say this is so cheesy, but the one thing that I want to, leave this community with is just knowing that you're not alone in whatever you're going through, and that all the things you're feeling, all the emotions that you're struggling with right now, especially with it, just 2020 is not a normal year for any of us, and we never expected to be where we are today. And so everything you're feeling is valid. And if you feel like you have the tools to cope, take care of yourself. Self-care is absolutely vital. But if you think that you cannot do this by yourself, get help. please. There's a huge network out there ready to support you. We can't do any of this alone, and we absolutely don't have to.
Thank you. Thank you. So for everybody, again, visit your Aren't Alone project. Get your t-shirt. I know I'm going to go get mine now. And continue to be part of the conversation. And Chelsea, when you are posting your future events, is it on your website? Is it on your Facebook? Where can they get more information?
Oh, it's everywhere. We follow us on all our social media channels. That's where we share a lot of resources. We follow basically all the different organizations nationwide that offer resources. So we've constantly shared those. The website, we have all our events on. And then we do have an email newsletter that we send out every other week or so. And so if you want to sign up for that, you can do it on the website.
That's great. Well, thank you, Chelsea. It was absolutely amazing to spend time with you. It took us, you and I, a year to get to talk. So finally we are talking, and it's just things happen at the right time, and this is the right time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you. Have a good day. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, all.
Next Tuesday.